All right, hello once again. Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going through a series of presentations. I've done 9 on HTML, which allows us to add content to a website, and now I'm on the 4th video on CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, which allows us to style that content. Now we've got kind of a hodgepodge and a mess right here, but I wanted to mention before we go on a couple things. First of all, let's see, where am I here? There we go. Web Safe Color Chart, CSS color codes. All right, these supposedly are the 216 colors that are referred to as web safe colors. It says they emerged during the early era of the internet. There's 216 colors that should be displayed consistently across all major browsers. Now you can see there's all sorts of different colors. I'm not going to go over one of those. Now that said, when you look at all of the different permutations, etc., there are literally over 17, I think it's either 16.7 or 17.6 million colors available to you, or color combinations. These are the ones, these 216s, that should show the same on any browser. Now, if we came in here, let's see, what makes the color safe, web colors, 216. There's our color names. Now, I don't know if these are the same 216 or not. I'm not going to take the time to count them, but probably. So if we went in and actually said color, colon, and A's, it should give us Alice Blue, Antique White, Aqua, and Marine. Let's very quickly just see if that's the case in Azure, if we get those 5. So if we come in here and under color, if I remove what's there, and I say A, try it again, color, A. Well, something that it doesn't like. Oh, that's going to be because that's text color. So let's go back. We'll change that back to the way it was. Okay. But let's say background, color, A. We don't know what's going on here, but well, what I wanted to show you, and I'm not, but what I wanted to show you is, again, these are the 140 colors sorted by hex value. All modern browsers support the following 140 color names. All right, these are the ones that you should get by default. So if you remember when we did gray, there was one gray and there was another. They're both the same gray technically, but they're just 2 different spellings of the same one. There was goldenrod, we saw corn silk, etc. All right, I'll leave it at that. The other thing I wanted to mention was we've started talking about fonts. And there's also what's referred to as web-safe fonts. All right, so it says the following list are the best web-safe fonts for HTML and CSS. So in other words, these particular fonts that you see right here should be supported on virtually any operating system and any browser. You'll notice that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them say sans serif, and the last 5 say, well, the next 3 say serif. The Courier New says monospace, and the last one says cursive. All right, and they give you examples of each one of these. I'm not going to run through one of them, but what I want to do is I want to say sans serif versus serif fonts. All right, and you'll notice A serif font is a decorative stroke that finishes off the end of the letter's stem. So there's serif there, and there's sans serif. All right. The serif font is more ornamental. All right. While the sans serif is more clean and precise. So if we look quickly at these pictures of each, you'll notice under the bottom, etc., how they look a little bit different. And you might say, well, this A looks like this A. No. Notice here how that A kind of ends straight. Here it's got like a little curl to it, etc. All right. It says both of these styles have their own unique personality and communicate very different messages. It's important to understand that each style, and make sure you're choosing a font that aligns with your message. So we could click on this, but I just very quickly wanted to mention that to you. All right, that there are serif fonts rather, and sans serif fonts. All right. Now, I want to keep going in here, and I want to talk about a couple more things. All right. First of all, and we've talked about this before, this right here is an H1 tag. This is a div. This is an H2 tag. The reason I'm telling you this is if you look at these, you'll notice they stretch across the entire way here. See the coloring, etc., and how it does? These are all block elements. On the other hand, this is an inline element. It's part of a paragraph, which is a block element, but the word discouraged, even though it is bolded, is not a block element. A block element takes up basically all that room. All right? It goes, by default, it takes up the whole width of the browser. So if I make this smaller, it still is taking up the entire width. All right? All right. Now there's a lot more in here to talk about, and a lot more in here to go over, and we will continue to go over the stuff that's in here. But I do want to go back to something we talked about a few lectures ago, and it's what I want to talk about next. So I'm going to right mouse click on here, and I'm going to choose inspect. All right, here's our document, and it's shown the way it would look on an iPad Pro, and you'll notice that if I change this, I can, play around with this, etc. But who cares? Well, what I want to do is over here, I want to click on computed. And I want you to see this, because that's what I want to talk about in this particular lecture. And that is what's referred to as the CSS Box Model. I was going to say block model, and it sounded wrong. It's the box model. Now, you've got 4 things here. And everything that you create in CSS, everything that you have on a web page essentially is in what's called a box. Every letter, every word, every paragraph, every image, etc. On the inside of the box is the content. So for instance, this H1 tag here that says logo, that thing right there. All right. So if I highlight that over here, there it is. You can see it highlighted. See how it turns blue? All right. So if we click on that, it's letting us know that it is 1024 pixels wide and 37 pixels tall. That's the content. Around the content, we have what's called padding. Now, do you care? Well, I want to show you why you might care. So you see what this looks like in here right now, and it's going to give me a chance to go over some of this stuff with you. But when I come back to here, I'm going to close this. All right. And I'm going to go back into my CSS. And around this logo, right here, around the logo, I'm going to add padding all the way around it, and I'm going to put in 2 rem. And that means 32 pixels. We'll talk about that in another lecture. But what I want you to see is that got a lot bigger all the way around. Okay? So who cares? Why am I even telling you this? Because if we go back to here again, now what we'll notice, all right, when we go back to our logo, our thing here that says logo, and we go back to compute it again, now it's telling us we've got 32 pixels, which is 2 rems, of padding all the way around. So padding is what surrounds your content. Now, it could be 0. There could be nothing surrounded your content. You're surrounding your content. But if I come back in here again, and I come back again to where we were, and now I put in here border. And I'm going to put in a little kind of a chunky one, 5 pixels, dotted, orange. Going to look ugly, but that's okay. All right. And now I switch back into here. You may or may not be able to tell, but I've got an orange border. And now it's telling me I've got a border. And that border is 5 pixels in size. So you've got your content. Surrounding your content, you've got padding. Surrounding your padding, you've got a border. All right, and then let's go back in and look at the last one. So let's put in here margin, and we'll put in here, I don't know, 3 rem. Okay, and then I'm going to jump back into here. And hopefully you notice now I've got a lot of area in here. But this is showing us the box model. It's showing us that in here, our actual logo now is 854 by 37. And you're like, wait a minute, it was 1024. Why isn't it that anymore? And it's not, because now the size of this has been cut down because we've added 32 pixels of padding here and 32 here. 32 plus 32 is 64. All right. Then we've got our border, which is 5 and 5, so that's 10. So 64 and 10 is 74. And then we've got 48 and 48, which is 96. So if I say 48 plus 5 is 53 and 32, 53 and 32 is 85 plus 85, that's 170. If I add 170 to my 854, surprise, it becomes 1024. So if I were to remove the padding and the border and the margin from here, this would increase to 1024. But since I added 32 pixels of padding, and the padding here is shown in green on my picture here, all the way around, this means top, right, bottom, and left. Then I added a border, which was that orange thing, top, right, bottom, and left. Then I added margin, which is shown here in kind of this other orange, top, right, bottom, and left. So every time on a web page that I add padding and or border and or margin, my content size, whatever I have holding it, is kind of going to shrink. All right. And there's only so much I can do to prevent that from happening. So the box model says that what I can do with any element, since any element technically can have content, padding, border, margin. It can have, I mean, if it's an element, it has content, even if it's an empty content. But it may or may not have padding. It may or may not have border. It may or may not have margin. All right? But padding is the area that surrounds the content. Border is the area that surrounds the padding. Margin is the area that surrounds the border. So to try to make it simpler, padding is the area basically directly around the content itself. So if you've got no border, so if we remove the border here, the only thing that's going to look different on here is you won't see the dash stuff around here. But you'll still have the stuff that's in here because that, again, is the margin. You'll still have the stuff in here, because that's the padding. A thing that a lot of times people really get confused about when they're working with a box model is when to use padding and when to use border. So I'm going to jump back to our friends here at w3schools.com, and I'm going to do a search in here for the CSS Box Model. All right. And, well, I thought it would be in here. Let's see. That's okay. We'll just put it in here. CSS Box Model. And we'll find it in W3 Schools. There it is. And lo and behold, it shows the same kind of picture I just showed you. And notice when they explain it, it's very similar to the explanation I just gave you. Content, the content of the box, where text, images, etc. appear. Padding is the area around the content. It's transparent, which means you can't give padding or margin a color like you can a border. All right. Border surrounds the padding and it surrounds the content. And margin is the area outside of the border. And again, it's transparent. And as they mention in here, this is kind of a good example here. So here is a box. What better way to demonstrate the box model than with a box? But if I come through here and my margin right now is 20 pixels, if I change this to 120 pixels, watch the area that's in here. And notice, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to say padding, so let me do that. Let me do that again. If I do padding, and I'm going to change this to 150 pixels, now look at the area in here and see how it changes. There you go. And let's knock it back down again, and let's make it, in fact, let's make it real small. So let's make it 25 pixels. All right. And then you notice the stuff is pretty much smushed together. Margin, if I change this to 120 pixels, notice how the area that's in here, how that changes. See that? Now, when I work with margin and I work with padding and border for that matter, let's change this back again to 20. All right. And let's make the border here that's 15 pixels is pretty thick. Let's make it 3 pixels, solid green, and you notice how much smaller it gets. But what I want you to understand here, is the border, I can make the whole thing, which says all the way around. But I can also say, if I want here, for example, border top. And notice I only get a top border. I can say border right. And I only get a right border. I can say border bottom. And I only get a bottom border. Finally, as you'd probably guess, I can say border left. And I only get a left border. So with what I've got here, in essence, what we did, and you don't have to do them in this order, but I like to put them in the order, their natural order. So we've got top, right. Again, you don't have to line these up either. I'm just a little anal this way. Bottom, and left. Now, if I click run, I'm going to have the border all the way around. Now, this is overkill, but you can do this. So I can put all 4 of them in, or any combination. For instance, if I only wanted a top and bottom border, I could remove these, and now I've only got a top and a bottom. And if I only wanted a left and a right, I could do that as well. All right. But the shortcut, if I want to put it all the way around, is to do this, to just say border, 3 pixels solid green. I got everything. Same thing with padding and margin. If I only want padding here on the left, first of all, what if I set padding to 0 pixels? And I run it. Now there's no padding in there. All right. But what if I change that? I'll make it 10. All right. There's a little bit all the way around. But again, with padding, I can say padding top. And notice I only get the padding there. I can say padding right. And I only get it there. I can say padding bottom. And I only get it on the bottom. And I can say padding left. And only get it here on the left. All right, now I was showing you margin when I said that, but that's okay. So padding left, and let's say again, 10 pixels. Remember, padding is the area that's right here, all the way around. So again, overkill, but I could have come in here, and where I've got that border, let me get rid of that. And I can come in and, oops, I did the wrong one. I'm sorry. So let me come in here. And why do I keep doing that one? I don't know. Well, it's not. Why is it copying border and not padding? I don't know. We'll just change it here. So we'll do padding. Padding. And padding. There is a reason, a rationale behind this, and there's a reason I'm showing you all this. So I'm going to do a padding left 10 pixels. Then I'm going to, in fact, let's just do it again from the top. So we'll do padding top 10 pixels. These don't have to all be the same number. Padding right 30 pixels. Padding bottom 50 pixels. And padding left, let's put 25 pixels. And it looks a little bit different. The bottom just says 50, and it should have said 50 pixels. That's why that looks funky. And then we get more. So you could change these around any way you want. There are even shortcuts. So if I say here just padding, and I put in 2 values, 10 pixels, 50 pixels. What should happen here is I should have 10 pixels top and bottom. In fact, it looks like I got 10 here. So let's make this 25. So I should have 25 pixels top and bottom and 50 pixels right and left. And you see, so there's 25 and there's 50. Well, let's really make it big so you can see the difference. All right. I can also put in just one number. You've already seen this, so 25. That means do it all the way around. All right. There's also a way you can put in 3 numbers. So let's put in here 25, 50 pixels, and 75 pixels. And I believe when you do that, you do not use commas. All right. So I get 25 on the top, I get 50 on the left and right, and I get 75 on the bottom. And this same stuff that you see here, let's just change this back to 10 pixels. All right. So the same stuff applies to margin. So I can say margin 40 pixels, and that'll give me 40 all the way around here. You can see how that pushed it down. Or I can say margin top 40 pixels. In fact, let's make it 140. And you can see how that moved down, but there's no other margin in here anymore. I'm going to set that back again to just 20 pixels. All right, so there's 20 pixels there. I can do a margin right. You won't see that on here because we don't have content right here. But I could put margin right, 20 pixels. All right, it did move it, but it got rid of the margin we had there. Now I can say margin bottom, but again, since we don't have any bottom content there, you won't be able to tell. See that? But if we came down here and if I grab this, I'm going to grab this right here. And I'm going to put in a paragraph tag. And I'm going to put that in there 5 times. All right, and run it. Now I get a bunch of content down here. Now, if I come in and I say margin bottom, let's say 150 pixels, now you see what margin bottom does. All right, and then finally margin left pushes it over to the left. And just like we saw before, I can just say margin, and that'll give me 150 pixels all the way around. Or I can say margin and put in 2 numbers. So 20 pixels, 40 pixels, and say run. And I get 20 pixels top and bottom and 40 right and left. Or I can put in 3 numbers, 60 pixels. And I get 20 top, 40 right and left, and 60 on the bottom. So what this was meant to do, and I'm way over, was to demonstrate the CSS box model.